Ilara Vance was known as the quiet wife, the mousy woman clinging to her husband's arm. Tonight, she was just the crying wife, locked out of the biggest party of the year, while her husband, Julian, arrived with his new woman. The mistress, Serafina, dripping in diamonds Ilara should have been wearing, found her. She mocked Ilara's tears, her simple dress, her very existence. "You're nothing," Serafina hissed, enjoying the kill. But the doors of the gala were about to open again, and the people walking through them weren't just guests. They were the people who owned the building, and they were looking for Ilara. The apartment wasn't a home, it was a statement. A sprawling, 10,000-square-foot duplex on the 72nd floor overlooking Central Park. Every surface was cold, imported Italian marble. The art on the walls wasn't chosen. It was curated by a consultant who specialized in emerging, bankable artists. This was Julian Vance's world. Ilara just lived in it. Ilara Vance was, to the Upper East Side, a curiosity. She was pretty, in a fragile, watercolor sort of way. But she was quiet. She wore simple, elegant clothing from the brands like The Row or Loro Piana. But she wore them without the aggressive intent of her peers. She didn't summer in the Hamptons, she visited. She didn't chair committees, she volunteered. Julian, by contrast, was a supernova. He was a predator in a Tom Ford suit, a private equity shark who had built a formidable reputation on sheer, ruthless nerve. He was handsome, loud, and vibrantly charming. When he entered a room, the center of gravity shifted. Ilara was, in his orbit, a forgotten moon. They had met 4 years ago at a small gallery opening. She was an art history graduate, claiming to be an orphan from Switzerland who had come to New York on a modest inheritance. Julian was captivated by her innocence, her lack of ambition. She was a blank canvas, a soft place for a hard man to land. He saw her as a beautiful, manageable accessory. Ilara had believed he was different. She had wanted to be normal. She had run from her own life, from the suffocating weight of her family name, to see if she could be loved for just Ilara. Julian's love felt, for a time, like the validation she craved. Now, that validation felt like a cage. Tonight was the night that mattered most in their world, the Metropolitan Legacy Ball, the Met Gala as the public knew it, but for this private subset, it was the ultimate arena of power. Getting a ticket was one thing. Being seen was everything. Ilara stood in her cavernous, white-on-white walk-in closet, her fingers tracing the fabric of an Alice Plus Olivia gown. It was lovely, a deep emerald silk. She had saved for it from her personal allowance, the generous, string-attached stipend Julian provided. He hadn't even looked at it. "Is that what you're wearing?" he'd asked that morning, not looking up from his Patek Philippe watch as he fastened it. "Yes. You said you liked green," she replied, her voice small. "It's fine, Ilara. Just fine. Try to look less overwhelmed tonight. Serafina Dubois will be there. Her family is old world, and I need this new fund to look solid. Don't embarrass me." Serafina Dubois? The name hung in the air like toxic perfume. Serafina was everything Ilara was not. She was loud, bronzed, and surgically perfect. Her Instagram was a monument to her own existence. And for the past 6 months, her name was the one Ilara saw in hushed text messages on Julian's phone, the name attached to late-night client dinners and weekend golf trips. Ilara was not a stupid woman. She was a quiet one. There is a profound difference. She had seen the signs, collected the data, and felt the slow, agonizing death of her marriage. But she was holding on, clinging to the hope that the man she'd fallen for was still in there. "Julian," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "About tonight, I feel like we haven't connected in so long. Maybe we could just be together, like we used to be." Julian finally looked at her. His eyes, the color of a winter sky, were utterly void of warmth. "Elara," he sighed, the sound of a man burdened. "Tonight is not about us. It's about my career. It's about my future. Can you, for one night, just play the part? Smile, look pretty, and don't talk to anyone important about art history. God." He adjusted his lapels and walked out, leaving her standing in the cold, white mausoleum of their closet, the emerald dress suddenly looking cheap and childish. She was the invisible wife, a ghost in her own multi-million-dollar life, and tonight she was already crying, long before the first glass of champagne had even been poured. The rain started at 4 p.m., a violent, slanting New York downpour that turned the city into a watercolor of blurred neon and grey steel. Elara was having her hair done by a stylist she didn't like, a man Julian's assistant had booked. He kept sighing at the fineness of her hair, as if it were a personal failing. Julian was supposed to be home at 5 p.m. for them to dress and leave together. At 5:15 p.m., she was sitting on their white silk settee, her hair in a severe chignon that made her feel like a governess. Her makeup was done. The emerald dress was laid out. At 5:30 p.m., her phone chimed. It was Julian's assistant, not Julian. "Mr. Vance is running late. He will meet you at the venue. Your car is downstairs." A cold knot tightened in Elara's stomach. He wouldn't even ride with her. This was a new level of cold. She stood up, smoothing the silk of her dress, when Julian's personal tablet, the one he'd forgotten on the charging plate by the bar, lit up. It was a calendar notification. Reservation confirmation, the Carlisle. 11:30 p.m., Serafina Dubois, Champagne plus suite. It was a punch to the gut. The Carlisle, the place he had taken her on their first anniversary. But it got worse. A second notification popped up, an email from his personal account. Subject, Pickup, H. Winston. Body, the Midnight Seraph necklace is confirmed. Driver will collect at 6 p.m. and deliver directly to Ms. Dubois at the Mark Hotel. Ensure she has it before the carpet. Elara's breath hitched. The Midnight Seraph. She remembered it. She had seen it in a magazine. A stunning, pear-shaped sapphire surrounded by a constellation of white diamonds. She had pointed it out to Julian, a rare moment of desire. "How beautiful," she'd murmured. He'd glanced at it. "It's gauche, Elara. Tries too hard. It's new money." New money. The ultimate insult in his world. And now he had bought it for Serafina. He wasn't just cheating, he was replacing. He was taking the very thing Elara had admired and giving it to the other woman. The sound of the front door opening made her jump. Julian strode in, already in his tuxedo. He looked magnificent. A custom-fit Brioni, flawless and severe. He was checking his cufflinks, not her. "You're not ready," he snapped, his voice sharp. "The car is waiting. What have you been doing?" Elara didn't speak. She just held up his tablet, the email glowing on the screen. Julian's face didn't fall. It didn't register guilt or panic. It hardened. He looked at her, as if she were a disobedient employee. "You're snooping now?" he said, his voice dangerously low. The necklace, Julian," she whispered, the tears finally coming, hot and stinging. "You told me it was gauche. You bought it for her." Julian let out a short, sharp laugh. It was the cruelest sound she had ever heard. "Oh, Elara, grow up," he said, walking to the bar and pouring himself a whiskey. "Of course I bought it for her. It looks good on her. Serafina can carry it. She has presence. She's not a shrinking violet. She's your mistress, Elara choked out, the word tasting like ash. She's my partner, he corrected, turning to face her. She's an equal. She understands my world. She doesn't just weep all the time. And what am I? Elara asked, the tears now streaming down her face, ruining the expensive makeup. What am I, Julian? He took a slow sip of his whiskey. He looked at her, at the emerald dress, at her tear-streaked face. You, he said, setting the glass down with a heavy clink on the marble, are a liability. You were a sweet, naive girl from nowhere, and I gave you everything. I gave you this apartment. I gave you a name. I gave you a life you couldn't have dreamed of, and all you do is mope and cling. I'm done, Elara, I'm done. You're ending this. Tonight, before the gala. I'm ending this now, he said. And you're not going to the gala. You can't. You're a mess. Look at you. He pointed to her face, a mask of running mascara. You would embarrass me. But my ticket, she whispered, horrified. It's in my name. Julian, you can't just... I can, he said simply. Serafina is my guest. I've already cleared it with the committee. Her ticket is waiting. But mine... Julian walked over to the small, antique desk where the embossed invitation box sat. He picked up her ticket, Mrs. Elara Vance, and tore it in half. He dropped the pieces on the floor at her feet. You are nothing without me, Elara, he said, his voice final. You're just a sad orphan I picked up. Now I have to go. Serafina is waiting. Don't be here when I get back. My lawyer will have a severance package sent to you. It will be adequate. He buttoned his jacket, adjusted his bow tie in the hall mirror, and walked out the door, the click of the lock echoing in the silent, cavernous apartment. Elara sank to the floor, her emerald dress pooling around her. She was no longer just the invisible wife. She was the discarded wife, the crying wife, and she was utterly, completely alone. For a full hour, Elara did not move. The sounds of the city, the sirens, the rain, the distant horns, were muted by the thick, triple-paned glass. The only sound in the apartment was the ragged, painful sound of her own sobs. She was a fool. She had played the part of the simple girl so well, she had started to believe it herself. She had wanted, with a desperate, childish pining, to be loved for herself. She had run from the power, the obligations, the crushing weight of her real name, believing she could find something pure. Julian hadn't loved her. He had loved her lack of power. He had loved that she was malleable, that she was an accessory he could control. The second, a shinier, more powerful accessory came along. Serafina, with her old-world family and connections, he had discarded her. Her tears began to slow. The raw, hot grief began to cool, hardening into something else, something cold and heavy. Rage. She looked at the torn ticket on the floor. Mrs. Elara Vance. She looked at her reflection in the dark window. The running mascara, the red-rimmed eyes, the sad, simple dress. This was the woman Julian saw. This was the woman Serafina would mock. This was the crying wife. No, she whispered, her voice hoarse. She stood up, her knees cracking. She walked, not to her bedroom, but to the wall safe, hidden behind a minimalist abstract painting. She entered a 24-digit code. It wasn't a birthday. It was the coordinates of a bank vault in Switzerland. The safe opened. Inside there was no cash. There was no jewelry. There was only a single, matte black satellite phone. A device that did not run on any public carrier and could not be traced. She picked it up. Her hand was perfectly steady. The tears were gone. She dialed a number from memory. A +41 Geneva prefix. It rang twice. A man answered. His voice was clipped, precise, and held a faint, unplaceable European accent. "Yes? Caspian," Ilara said. Her voice was no longer the small, breathy whisper of Ilara Vance. It was the clear, cold, authoritative tone of Ilara Devereux. There was a pause on the other end. Then the voice warmed, just a fraction. "Ilara, it has been 182 days. I assume this is not a social call. Caspian Devereux, her brother, the fixer for the Devereux family, the man who ran the public-facing side of their empire while their father controlled the shadows." "He broke the contract, Caspian," Ilara said. "The marriage contract?" "All of it. The fidelity clause, the public humiliation clause. He has chosen another." Caspian sighed. It was not a sound of sadness. It was a sound of profound, weary irritation, like a groundskeeper finding a weed. "This experiment of yours, Ilara, this normal life, I assume it is now over." "It is over," she confirmed. "And the husband, this Julian Vance, what has he done, specifically?" "Papa will want details." "He is taking his mistress, Seraphina Dubois, to the Metropolitan Legacy Ball tonight. He tore up my ticket. He called me a liability. He is terminating our severance and having me removed from the apartment." The line was silent for a beat. "He tore up your ticket?" Caspian asked, as if clarifying an impossible piece of data. "Yes." "The boy is amusing, I'll give him that," Caspian murmured. "He doesn't know, does he? After 4 years, he still has no idea who you are. He thinks I'm an orphan from Zurich. Charming. And the mistress, Dubois, of the New York real estate Dubois? Yes. That's unfortunate for them," Caspian said. "Their largest lender is the Kratos Holding Group." "Which is us," Ilara finished. "Which is us," he agreed. "So what is the play, ma petite sœur? Do we simply crush him? Freeze his assets? An audit? I have the Interpol package on his desk by 9 a.m. tomorrow. It's already prepared. It's been prepared since your wedding day." Ilara looked at her ruined face in the mirror. She thought of Seraphina in her necklace. She thought of Julian, calling her nothing. "No," Ilara said. "Not tomorrow. Tonight. He is at the gala. He is presenting himself as a new power, with his new woman. He wants to be seen." "Ah," Caspian said, a smile entering his voice. "A public lesson. Excellent. Papa will approve. He loves opera. I need you here, Caspian. I need the full display. He called me nothing. He said I have no name. I need him to understand what my name is. That's a rather large ask, Ilara. We are in Geneva. The gala is now. You have a Gulf Stream at the airfield, the G700. It's 5 hours, wheels up to tarmac at Titterboro. You can be at the Met by 10:30 p.m. And Papa? Papa will come, Ilara said. Tell him Julian Vance put his hands on a Devereux asset. He hit you. Caspian's voice lost all its warmth. He tore the ticket at me. He'll understand the distinction. It was an act of aggression. Understood, Caspian said. We are moving. Now what about you? You are locked out. You are the crying wife. I'm on my way to the gala now. But your ticket... Ilara smiled, a cold, thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. He tore up the guest ticket for Mrs. Ilara Vance. He seems to have forgotten that the full name of the ball is the Metropolitan Legacy Ball, and the largest new wing is the Devereux wing of Hellenistic antiquities. My name is literally carved into the lobby wall. I don't need a ticket. I'm the landlord. Well played, sister. Now go, fix your face. And that dress, the emerald one, burn it. I need a new one. Already handled, Caspian said. A Plan B package was delivered to the Carlisle 2 hours ago. room 2801. The key is under your name. Your real name? It's been waiting for you. The Carlisle? That's where Julian and Serafina are going after. I know, Caspian said. Poetic, isn't it? Now, Elara, it is time to stop being Elara Vance. It is time to be Elara Devereux again. And we are disappointed. And a disappointed Devereux, as you know, is a very expensive thing. The line clicked dead. Elara walked into her bathroom. She scrubbed the ruined makeup from her face. She pulled her hair from the severe chignon, letting it fall. She was done crying. The curtain was rising. The steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art were a war zone of flashing lights. Paparazzi screamed names. Vogue correspondents, dressed in avant-garde ensembles, spoke in breathless superlatives. This was not just a party. It was the confluence of every stream of power in the world. Hollywood, tech, politics, and most importantly, old and new money. A black-on-black Escalade pulled up. The door opened, and a bespoke, hand-stitched leather shoe hit the rain-slicked pavement. Julian Vance emerged. He looked every inch the king he aspired to be. He smiled, a flash of white teeth, and turned to offer his hand. Out stepped Serafina Dubois. She was a vision in scarlet, a custom Dior gown that was less a dress and more a sculpture, clinging to her body in a way that screamed, "Look at me!" And around her neck, blazing under the camera flashes, was the Midnight Seraph necklace. The pear-shaped sapphire rested perfectly in the hollow of her throat. She was triumphant. "Julian Vance! Serafina Dubois!" the photographers yelled. Julian put a proprietary hand on the small of her back. "Ms. Dubois is a very close friend and business partner," he announced to a reporter. "We're celebrating the launch of our new joint venture." "Where's your wife, Julian?" shouted a journalist from page 6. Julian's smile didn't waver. "My wife, Elara, is feeling unwell tonight. She sends her regrets." Serafina preened. She leaned into the microphone. "Elara is just... she's very sensitive," she cooed, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "The pressure of an event like this, it's a lot for some people. We just want her to rest." They were the perfect picture of a power couple, the ruthless financier and the old money heiress. Inside, the gossip was already electric. "He actually did it," whispered one socialite to another over a glass of champagne. "He left Elara and brought her." "Honestly, it's an upgrade," the other replied. "Elara was such a bore. She had nothing to say. Serafina at least knows how to play the game." Julian and Serafina made their way through the receiving line, past the great hall and into the main party, held as always in the breathtaking expanse of the Temple of Denda. Serafina was holding court, her voice loud and bright. "Oh, this old thing?" she laughed, touching the necklace. Julian just insisted. "He has the most exquisite taste. He said he saw it, and it just screamed Serafina. He said he'd never seen a piece of jewelry suit someone so perfectly." She scanned the room, her eyes landing on Chloe, one of Elara's few friends from the charity committee. Chloe looked horrified. Serafina glided over. "Chloe, darling, you look sweet. I'm so glad you could make it. Have you heard from Elara? I'm so worried about her. Julian said she had a complete breakdown, just crying hysterically. It's so sad." "Elara is a good person, Serafina," Chloe said, her voice tight. "Oh, I know. She's the best person," Serafina said, sipping her champagne. "But let's be honest. She was never built for this. She's a little grey mouse. And Julian? Well, Julian is a lion. You can't expect a lion to live in a mouse hole forever. It's just nature." She laughed, a high, tinkling sound, and turned back to her new circle of admirers, She was untouchable. She had the man, she had the necklace, and she had the spotlight. Julian, watching her, felt a surge of pride. He had made the right choice. He had shed his liability. The future was his. The party was in full swing. The theme was gilded empires, and the room was a sea of gold, bronze, and diamond. And then Elara arrived. Elara did not use the front steps. She did not walk the red carpet. She used the private patron's entrance, the one that opened directly into the museum's curatorial wing. The security guards who saw her face on the Level 1 patron list, Devereaux Elara, simply bowed and opened the heavy bronze doors. She had gone to the Carlyle. The suite Caspian had booked was not a normal suite. It was a presidential penthouse. Laid out on the bed was not a dress, but a work of art. It was a custom Schiaparelli. Black velvet, so dark it seemed to absorb the light. It was starkly simple, with a high neck and long sleeves, but its front was dominated by a single piece of gilded, sculpted bronze, a massive anatomical bleeding heart pierced by a golden dagger. With it was a note from Caspian. They want gilded empires? Give them a gilded heart. Bleed him dry. She had washed her face. Her makeup was now severe and perfect, a dark, smoky eye and a blood-red lip. Her hair was slicked back, wet and shining. She looked nothing like the mousy wife. She looked like a general. She walked into the temple of Denda. She didn't pause. She didn't look for anyone. She walked straight to the bar, her heels clicking with sharp, audible taps on the stone floor. She ordered a glass of water. The music didn't stop, but a dozen conversations did. Who? Is that Elara Vance? My God, that dress, is that a Schiaparelli? Julian saw her first. His whiskey glass stalled halfway to his lips. His blood ran cold. It wasn't just that she was here. It was how she looked. The shrinking violet was gone. In her place was this creature, this woman of impossible, terrifying poise. Then Serafina saw her. Serafina's triumph turned instantly to acidic rage. How dare she? How dare this pathetic, crying little wife show her face here, looking like that? "Excuse me, darlings," Serafina said to her group. "I see a little mouse has lost its way. I need to go exterminate." She grabbed a fresh glass of champagne from a passing waiter's tray and stalked across the floor. Julian, frozen, tried to say, "Serafina, don't!" But the words wouldn't come. Elara was looking at the temple's hieroglyphs, ignoring the whispers. "Elara, darling." Elara turned slowly. She looked Serafina up and down. Her eyes rested for a moment on the midnight seraph necklace. "Serafina," Elara said, her voice a low, cool alto. "That necklace, it's lovely. It tries a little hard, but it suits you." Serafina's face twitched. She had been perfectly quoted. This was not the crying woman from the apartment. "You have some nerve," Serafina hissed, her voice low. "Julian told me you had an episode. You should have stayed home. You look positively skeletal. Is that dress vintage? Like from a thrift store?" "It's Schiaparelli," Elara said simply. "Oh, one of their experiments, I guess," Serafina spat. She was losing control. This woman wasn't cowering. "You need to leave," Serafina demanded. "You're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing Julian." "Am I?" Elara asked, taking a sip of her water. Serafina was shaking with anger. All her triumph was turning to ash. This nothing was stealing her moment. You're nothing," Serafina shrieked, her voice cracking. "You're a pathetic, penniless orphan he rescued. He's done with you. He's with me. He wants me." And in a fit of pure, childish malice, Serafina tripped, throwing the entire glass of champagne directly onto the front of Elara's dress. The gasps in the room were audible. The champagne hit the black velvet and the gilded heart, dripping onto the floor. Serafina smiled, her mask of fake sympathy back. "Oh my goodness, I am so clumsy. Look at that, all over your thing." She looked at Elara, expecting tears, expecting her to run. Elara did not move. She slowly looked down at the champagne dripping from the golden dagger on her chest. Then she looked back up at Serafina. She wasn't angry. She wasn't sad. She looked bored. "That was a mistake, Serafina," Elara said, her voice quiet but carrying in the sudden hush. "Was it?" Serafina scoffed. "What are you going to do, Elara? Cry? You have no money, no name, no husband. You're done." "No," Elara said, setting her water glass down. "You are." As if on cue, the massive, 20-foot-high doors to the great hall, which had been closed for an hour, were pushed open by museum security. The music stopped. The chatter died. Everyone turned to the door. An arrival this late was not just unusual, it was impossible. The doors were sealed at 8:30 p.m. The event's host, the formidable Mrs. Althorpe, a woman who inspired more fear than Anna Wintour, was known to turn away billionaires for being 5 minutes late. But the doors were open. In the entrance, silhouetted against the light of the great hall, stood 3 men. The man in the center was older, perhaps in his late 70s, with a shock of thick, silver hair. He was not tall, but he occupied the space as if he owned it. He wore a simple, flawlessly cut Brioni dinner jacket. He radiated an authority so profound it was almost a physical force. To his right stood a younger man, handsome in a severe, dangerous way. He was tall, dark-haired, and his eyes, the color of Elara's, swept the room with the cool, analytical gaze of a predator. This was Caspian. To the left stood another man, broader, built like a vault, who was clearly the head of a security detail that was fanning out into the room, their dark suits and earpieces a stark contrast to the Gilded Age costumes. The room was utterly silent. People didn't just know who these men were. They knew. This was not celebrity. This was not new money. This was power. "My God," whispered a hedge fund manager. "That's Augustus Devereux." "Who?" his young date asked. "Augustus Devereux," the man hissed, his face pale. "He doesn't go to parties. He buys the companies that throw the parties. He owns the mines, the banks, the shipping lanes. He's old world, like Renaissance old world." Mrs. Althorpe, the host, was practically running toward them, her face a mask of flustered reverence. "Mr. Devereux, we had no idea. We are honored, truly." Augustus Devereux did not look at her. He didn't look at anyone. His eyes scanned the room, found their target, and he began to walk. Caspian and the security head flanked him. The crowd parted. It was like watching a shark move through a school of fish. They walked past the billionaires. They walked past the movie stars. They walked past the politicians. Julian Vance was frozen. His mind was screaming, "Devereux! Devereux! Why is that name familiar?" Serafina was confused. Who is that old man? Why did the music stop? Augustus Devereux stopped directly in front of Elara. He looked at the champagne dripping from her dress. His face, which had been neutral, tightened in displeasure. He looked at her face. "Elara, my child," he said, his voice a low rumble that carried across the stone floor. He took a silk pocket square from his jacket and gently, tenderly, dabbed at a drop of champagne on her chin. "You are late," he said. Elara smiled, a real, shaky smile. "I was detained, Papa. Papa!" The word exploded in the silent room like a cannon shot. Julian Vance's body went cold. He finally placed the name. Devereux. The Devereux wing. The Kratos Holding Group, the most powerful, secretive, and wealthiest family in the world. A family that made old money, like the Dubois family, look like lottery winners. And Elara, his quiet, mousy, orphan wife. Seraphina's jaw was open. Her face, a moment ago so triumphant, was chalk white. She looked at Julian, then at Elara, then at the man who was Augustus Devereux. Caspian stepped forward. He was holding a flawless black cashmere wrap. He draped it over Elara's shoulders, covering the champagne-stained dress. He kissed her on the forehead. "You should have called sooner, petite sœur," he murmured. "I detest this city." He then turned his cold, dark eyes to the stunned couple. "Seraphina Dubois," Caspian said, his voice light, conversational. "That is a lovely necklace. A Harry Winston, isn't it? The Midnight Seraph. My father commissioned it last year as a 25th birthday present. For my sister." Seraphina's hand flew to her throat. She looked at Julian, her eyes wide with pure, undiluted terror. "Julian," she whimpered. "Julian, what is this?" Julian couldn't speak. He was drowning. "Ah," Caspian said, finally turning to him. "Mr. Vance, my sister mentioned you were unaccommodating." The silence in the Temple of Dendor was no longer just a pause in the music. It was a physical weight, a crushing vacuum that sucked all the air from the room. The only sounds were the distant, unholy whir of 1,000 camera phones switching to video, and the faint, hysterical hic of a sob coming from Seraphina Dubois. Julian Vance was a man who processed the world in vectors of risk and opportunity. His mind, trained for high-speed arbitrage, was now spinning at 1,000,000,000,000 revolutions per second, trying to find an angle, a foothold, a buy in what was clearly a catastrophic sell market. Devereux, Elara Devereux. The name echoed in his skull, colliding with 4 years of memories. Elara in the library, studying. Elara on the phone, speaking Swiss German in low, hushed tones. Elara declining to buy a 30-carat diamond because it was unseemly. He had called it modesty. It had been boredom. He had called her a nobody. She was, he now realized with a dawning, stomach-dropping horror. An everybody. She wasn't just on the list. She was the list. But Julian Vance was a closer. He had talked his way out of SEC investigations, hostile takeovers, and 2 prior messy divorces. This was just a misunderstanding. A family spat. He could fix this. He just had to regain control of the narrative. He took 1 step forward, forcing a smile onto his face. It felt like stretching cold plastic. He spread his hands in a gesture of magnanimous confusion. "Augustus." "Mr. Devereux, sir," he boomed, his voice cracking only slightly. "Caspian. What a truly profound honor. I feel like an absolute fool." He laughed. It was a high, thin, terrible sound. "My wife," he said, turning to Elara, his eyes practically screaming, "Play along. My darling Elara. She always did love her little secrets. 4 years. 4 years of this test." He turned back to Augustus, trying to build a bridge of shared masculine understanding. "A test, was it, sir? To see if I loved her for her, and not for this? To see if I was worthy of the Devereux name?" He tapped his own chest. "Well, I hope I passed. I loved her as Elara, the simple orphan. I gave her everything I could." The room waited. Augustus Devereux did not smile. Caspian looked at him as if he were a specimen in a jar. Elara was the one who answered. Her voice was flat and cold, echoing slightly in the ancient temple. "You failed, Julian." The simple sentence hit him like a physical blow. "We are not here for tests, Mr. Vance," Augustus said. His voice was not loud, but it had a gravelly resonance that vibrated in the air. "We are here for a breach of contract." Julian's mind seized on the word. Contract. This, he understood. "The prenup, of course," he said quickly, switching tracks. He was a businessman. He could talk business. "Sir, I assure you, it's more than generous. Ilara will be taken care of to a standard, well, to a standard I thought was appropriate. I wouldn't dream of contesting." "He does not mean the prenuptial agreement, Julian," Caspian interrupted, stepping forward. His tone was light, almost bored, as if explaining a simple math problem to a very stupid child. "He means the marriage contract, the one our family office drafted, the one you signed. That was just a standard, a formality. There is nothing standard about a Devereux, Mr. Vance," Caspian said. "You've been signing our documents for 4 years, and you've never read a single one, have you? You were too arrogant. You signed the lease on your magnificent apartment, which is owned by a Devereux holding company. You signed the banking agreements for Ilara's modest trust, a trust you co-opted. You even signed the access agreement to this very museum tonight, under the clause, spouse of a level 1 patron. You just don't read the fine print." Julian's face was ashen. I don't know what you mean." "Let me be clearer." Caspian moved, and for the first time, Julian saw he was carrying a heavy, leather-bound document, embossed with a crest Julian didn't recognize. A golden griffin. Caspian didn't hand it to him. He tossed it. The heavy portfolio landed on the stone floor at Julian's feet with a loud, definitive slap that made 3 people in the front row jump. "That," Caspian said, "is your life's work, or rather, your life's fraud." "This is slander," Julian yelled, finding a sudden burst of panicked rage. "My fund is one of the top performers in the sector. My books are clean. This is harassment." "Your fund," Caspian said, as if reading from an invisible teleprompter, "is a house of cards, the Vance Capital Group, your flagship. You claimed in your last investor letter 18.2% returns quarter over quarter. An impressive number, a fictional number." Caspian began to pace, slowly, in front of the frozen couple. "You're actually 41% down. You made a catastrophic, leveraged bet on synthetic biotech futures, and it blew up in your face, and you've been covering the losses ever since." That's a lie. My books are audited. They are validated by Lux. Validate! The industry standard!" Julian was screaming now, his face red. He was pointing. Caspian stopped pacing and smiled. It was the smile of a shark that had just tasted blood. "Lux Validate," he said, savouring the name. "Yes, a charming, very discreet little firm in Luxembourg. The industry standard. My father founded it in 1983. We've owned it for 39 years. Julian's knees literally buckled. He grabbed the air for balance. "We founded it specifically to trap greedy, arrogant little men like you," Caspian continued, his voice dropping. "Men who marry into families they don't understand. Men who think they're the smartest in the room. You haven't been audited for 4 years, Julian. You've been monitored. We have a record of every transaction, every falsified document, every late-night transfer." Caspian tilted his head. "And that's where it gets truly pathetic. You needed to cover your margins. You needed cash. So you started siphoning from... where was it? Ah, yes." He looked at his sister. "The Ilara Vance Benevolent Fund, a trust she set up for orphanages in Eastern Europe. You've been borrowing from orphans, Julian, to finance your new penthouse and to buy jewelry for your mistress." The gasp from the crowd was a roar. This was not just infidelity. This was not just white-collar crime. This was a new, breathtaking level of monstrous. Serafina, who had been frozen in a state of primal terror, finally broke. She scrambled backward, shoving Julian away from her as if he were diseased. "Julian, what is he talking about?" she shrieked. "Tell them it's a lie. Tell them I had nothing to do with this." She turned, her eyes wild, and landed on Elara. This was her last play, woman to woman. Mercy. "Elara, please," she whimpered, her voice cracking. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. He tricked me. He told me he said you were a nobody, a charity case. He said you were—" "He didn't trick you, Serafina," Elara said, her voice cutting through the other woman's sobs. "He just found someone who was as hollow as he is. You didn't care if I was a nobody. You just enjoyed being somebody at my expense. You loved mocking the crying wife. You loved it." Serafina recoiled, and into that silence Augustus Devereux spoke. His cold, heavy gaze shifted from Julian and landed, for the first time, directly on Serafina. She flinched as if he had struck her. "Miss Dubois," he said. Yes, sir," she whispered, trembling. "Your father, Robert Dubois. He is a proud man. He fancies himself a titan of New York real estate." Augustus took a step closer to her. "But a titan who is leveraged to 90% is not a titan. He is just a man in a tall building, waiting for a strong wind." Serafina's face, already pale, turned a ghostly, bloodless white. I don't—" "His primary creditor," Augustus continued, "for almost all of his major projects. The new Hudson Yards Tower, the global expansion into Dubai. It is all financed by the Kratos Bank of Geneva." He paused, letting the name hang in the air. "I am Kratos Bank. It is a subsidiary of my family's private accounts." Augustus looked at his Patek Philippe watch, a simple, elegant piece that was worth more than Serafina's entire apartment. "I made a call from my car on the way here, Ms. Dubois. I find public humiliation distasteful, especially when it is directed at my family. As of 10:10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Kratos Bank is calling in all of your father's markers. The $800 million note on the Hudson Yards project, the $300 million revolving line of credit, all of it. Due 9 a.m. tomorrow, Geneva time." He looked up from his watch. "Which was, I believe, 42 minutes ago. Your father is already getting the calls. Your family, Miss Dubois, will be bankrupt by morning." Serafina let out a sound. It was not a scream. It was a low, animal wail of pure, existential loss. She sank to her knees, her custom Dior gown pooling around her like a puddle of blood. No. My father. You can't. We'll be nothing." "Yes," Augustus said, the word of final judgment. "You used that word earlier this evening, I believe." "Nothing. You will now have a lifetime to learn its true meaning." "It was him!" Serafina shrieked, pointing at Julian. "It was all him! I didn't know! I never knew!" Her hands flew to her neck, to the midnight seraph. Her fingers fumbled with the clasp. She couldn't get it open. With a desperate, feral cry, she ripped the necklace from her throat. The diamond-encrusted chain snapped. She crawled forward on her knees and held it out, her hand shaking so violently the sapphire vibrated. "Take it. Please, I don't want it. Take it back. It was him. It was all him." The necklace, Julian's grand romantic gesture, was now an offering of terror. Caspian looked at the exquisite piece of jewelry in her trembling hand with utter revulsion. "My sister doesn't want it now," he said, his voice laced with contempt. "It's gauche. It's been soiled, much like your family's name." He turned back to Julian. Julian was broken. He was on the ground, a heap of ruined Brioni, staring at the leather audit, the sobbing mistress, the discarded necklace. He was a cornered animal, and like any cornered animal, he turned to violence. "You!" he snarled, his voice a guttural rasp. He pointed a shaking finger at Alara. "You bitch! You snake! You watched me, for 4 years! You set me up!" "I loved you, Julian," Alara said. Her voice finally broke, not with sadness but with a cold, righteous fury. "I gave you the only thing I had that was real. I gave you Alara, the nobody, the woman with no name and no money. I gave you the real me, and you tore it apart. You called me a liability. You tore me apart, in our home. This isn't justice," he spat, scrambling to his feet. This is a slaughter. You're using your father's power to... This is illegal." "Oh, Julian," Caspian sighed, looking at his watch as if this were all becoming a dreadful bore. "The slaughter hasn't even begun. That's for the lawyers. They'll be picking over the bones of your life for the next decade. This is just the arrest." Julian let out a high-pitched, hysterical laugh. "Arrest? You can't arrest me. This is a private party. For what? Adultery? Bad investments? For wire fraud? For embezzlement? For 3 counts of conspiracy and multiple violations of the RICO Act." Caspian ticked off the charges on his fingers. "You didn't just move money, Julian. You ran a criminal enterprise, using my sister's trust as collateral. And the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. He's an old friend of my father's. He attended my christening. He owes us." Caspian didn't snap his fingers. He didn't have to. He simply nodded, once, toward the entrance of the temple. The crowd parted again. The men who came through this time were not in tuxedos. They were in rumpled, government-issue suits. They looked utterly out of place and completely unimpressed by the diamonds and silk. "Agent Thompson, Agent Rodriguez, FBI, White-Collar Crime Division," the lead agent said, his voice booming over the silence. He walked past Augustus and Caspian as if they were furniture. His eyes were locked on his target. Julian Vance. Julian's world, which had been collapsing in slow motion, now simply ended. No, you can't. The agents were on him. They were efficient, professional. One grabbed his left arm, the other his right. They spun him around and slammed him against a 4th century BC stone pillar. The click of the handcuffs locking was the loudest sound Alara had ever heard. "Julian Vance, you are under arrest." The agent began to recite the Miranda rights, his voice a flat drone. "You have the right to remain silent." It was only then, with his hands bound behind his back, that Julian's brain finally, truly, accepted his fate. The bravado, the anger, the fraud, it all dissolved, leaving only the pathetic, terrified child beneath. He turned, his face a mask of pleading, pathetic terror, and he looked at Alara. Alara, please, don't let them. It was a mistake. I love you. I've always loved you. She meant nothing. Serafina meant nothing. It was business. Alara, tell them, please, I'll do anything. Alara. He was weeping now, thick, ugly tears of pure loss. The agents began to drag him away, his expensive, hand-stitched shoes scraping on the ancient stone. The entire room was watching. Alara looked at this man. This thing being dragged away, screaming her name. She remembered his words from just hours before. "You are nothing without me, Alara. You're just a sad orphan I picked up. Don't be here when I get back." She took 2 steps forward. The agents paused, respecting the woman who was, in this moment, the absolute center of all power in the room. She leaned in close, so only Julian could hear her. Her voice was a bare whisper. You told me I was nothing without you, Julian. You told me not to be here when you got back." She straightened up, her voice clear and carrying once more a final, public judgment. "You were right about one thing. You shouldn't have come back." "No!" he screamed, a raw animal sound of pure, annihilated pride. The agents yanked him backward, and he was gone, dragged out of the temple, out of the museum, and out of her life forever. The aftermath was a tableau of ruin. Julian was gone. Seraphina Dubois was a sobbing, catatonic heap on the floor, ignored by everyone. The midnight seraph necklace lay a few feet away, a glittering, priceless piece of trash. Augustus Devereux looked around the room. He saw the guests, their phones still out, their faces a mask of shock and awe. His gaze was ice. "Mrs. Althorpe," he called out. The hostess, who had been hiding behind a sarcophagus, rushed over, her face pale. Yes, Mr. Devereux." "The entertainment is over," Augustus said. "Please restart the music and have someone clean this up." He gestured vaguely to the sobbing Seraphina. "My daughter and I are thirsty." He turned to Elara and offered her his arm. Caspian took her other side, draping his own jacket over her shoulders, covering the champagne-stained Schiaparelli. "My dear," Augustus said gently, as the orchestra timidly began to play a soft violin concerto. "Your first act as the new head of the North American Devereux Endowment will be to select a new wing to sponsor. This one," he glanced around the Temple of Dendur, "is beginning to feel rather common." Elara looked at her father, and then at her brother. The crying wife was gone. The invisible wife was gone. "I would like that very much, Papa," she said. And the three of them, the House of Devereux, turned their backs on the wreckage and walked into the party, not as guests, but as the owners of the night. The whispers that followed them were no longer of pity or confusion. They were of pure, unadulterated fear and respect. The lioness and her pride were home, and just like that, the crying wife was gone, and the Devereux heiress had taken her place. The gala wasn't the end. It was her beginning. Seraphina's family was ruined by mourning, and Julian Vance faced a future, not in a penthouse, but in a federal prison, his name erased from the society pages forever. Elara taught them the most expensive lesson in New York. Never ever mistake a quiet woman for a weak one. Sometimes the mouse you're mocking is just a lioness in disguise, waiting for the right moment to roar. What did you think of Elara's revenge? Was it too harsh, or did Julian and Seraphina get exactly what they deserved? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of drama and righteous revenge, please hit that like button, share it with a friend who loves a good twist, and make sure you subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories. Don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss an update.